Hello to everyone who is joining us. We'll wait for most people to get into the room before starting. So in another minute or two. Okay, so it seems like the most folks who are in the waiting room have made it in. I'm sure people will continue to join us over over the next chunk of time. So depending on where you are joining us from, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good very late evening. Thank you so much for joining today's webinar on resisting threats, defending academic freedom in Southeast Asia. My name is Tyrell Haberkorn, and I'm a faculty member in Southeast Asian Studies at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. This webinar is being sponsored by the Justice in Southeast Asia Lab at UW, and then also the Southeast Asia Coalition for Academic Freedom, or SEACAF. I'll let my colleague Bencharat Chua introduce SEACAF, but let me share a little bit about the Justice in Southeast Asia Lab, or JSEALab. The lab, which is generously funded by the Henry Luce Foundation, was established in 2021. The lab aims to foster exchange among faculty, graduate students, and practitioners, and in particular, public-facing events that foster networks and shared work among members of that range of groups. The JSEALab reflects the recognition that there's a need for academic work and universities in particular to be directly responsive to ongoing social justice crises in the region. The lab does so by expanding scholarship and public engagement through research-led undergraduate and graduate teaching, public workshops, translation of both key and marginal documents, and collaboration with relevant scholars and non-governmental organizations through events such as this one. And the JSEALab is so excited to be partnering with SEACAF for today's event. The protection of academic freedom, of the rights of scholars and students to think, express, write, question, teach, even or perhaps especially when the ideas at the core of these actions are those that threaten those in power, whether it's a state, a military, a monarchy, a president, a Department of Immigration, to refer to the United States, the country where I sit now, is essential for a free and open society. When academic freedom is impeded, the entire society is impeded. And in addition, it's not only that the society is impeded, but quite frankly, the ideas that are so urgent for us, whether they are in the humanities and social sciences or in STEM, are also impeded. And every society and the world needs those to flourish. Many of you will be aware of ongoing threats to academic freedom in different countries around the region in recent years. We could have a long conversation about the state of things in each country, both what kinds of repressive actions have taken place and the ways in which so many people are fighting back in creative and critical ways, including surveillance, arrest, prosecution, and the seemingly less punitive and yet still silencing actions that come, for example, in the forms of suggested research topics to avoid, or just the refusal to fund entire fields of study that are not desired by those in power. Today, our speakers are going to share their observations, experiences, and ideas for redress in Thailand, Cambodia, the Philippines, and in comparative perspective. Just a note on process is that each of our four speakers will introduce themselves, and each will speak for 15 to 20 minutes, and then we'll have a discussion. We'll use the Q&A box on Zoom for the discussion, and so you can put your questions in there whenever you would like. I would now like to pass the screen to my friend and colleague, Bencharat Chua from Mahidol University and SEACAF.
Thank you, Tyrell. Thank you, Tyrell and JSEALab for inviting SEACAF to join this important webinar. I'm Bencharat Chua. I'm the lecturer at the Institute of Human Rights and Peace Study at Mahidol University, Thailand. I'm also the director of the newly formed Southeast Asia Coalition for Academic Freedom, or SEACAF. SEACAF was formed only last year at the end of 2024 as to defend and promote academic freedom in Southeast Asia. We are hosted at the Institute of Human Rights and Peace Study, and we hope that we would build on strong regional networks of academics working in human rights education and research. We recognize the increasing threat to intellectual autonomy and institutional independence. So we hope that we can bring together educators, researchers, students, policymakers, civil society, and to advance academic freedom as a cornerstone of democratic and progressive society. And we do this through membership and coalition building. And later on, we will hear that we quite in our region, there are quite a number of strong academic and students who are standing up to defend academic freedom through different forms. We are also engaging in research and monitoring in order to understand more the nuance of academic freedom in the region and understand the regional context that shape how that shape the academic freedom, academic discussion, and how the university work in the regional context. And we hope that we can do advocacy and training to spread more understanding and establish academic freedom principle within university in the region. I will just give very short, brief overview. I can start right, Tyrell. I will just give a very brief, short overview of the state of academic freedom in Southeast Asia, because I believe that we will hear more detail from the other three colleagues from three different country contexts. And I think this is very timely that we talk about this academic freedom, not only because of what's happening in the US, but it is also something that we are witnessing the challenges in in Southeast Asia context. But having said that, we also need to recognize that I would say what's happening in the US now is something that we in Southeast Asia has been experiencing for a while, although in different forms and extent. So my discussion today will look at the regional overview of the state of academic freedom, and I will highlight some of the recent development in order to give the overall picture. And although I will attempt to draw patterns and trends across the region, but I will focus on the countries that are not presenting here, because other speakers will be able to give you more details on the Philippines, Cambodia, and Thailand. I think when we talk about academic freedom these days, we tend to discuss it as it is under the situation of democratic backsliding, democratic decline. But I argue that in Southeast Asia, although we have rich history of student and academic activism, and in particular in some countries like in the Philippines, you have a traditional culture where the academics stand firm to say that they have independence to do research, to talk about political situation and so on. But the university in our region is always part of the state mechanism that are deemed to have the duty or responsibility to instill and create the so-called good citizen for the countries. And I think we need to take into account that context because it shapes what can be talked about, what are the expected role of the academics and the university, what cannot be talked about by the academic in our region. And in that light, to understand our discussion on academic freedom, especially in higher education context, I would propose that we need to look at universities as site for production of critical knowledge, and how that university as site of critical knowledge operate within the context where the state look at the university as site of production of good citizen. We need therefore to look also at university as space to cultivate civic culture and citizenship through civic education. And again, civic education are defined differently in different states. When we talk to colleagues from Vietnam, for example, our colleagues are very concerned when we use the term civic education. Why we mean talking, educating people to be active citizens, to have a critical views about the dominant culture or dominant politics. Civic education in Vietnam means teaching people to be citizens that follow the state ideology. So these are the nuances that we need to understand when we talk about what can be talked about in our region. And with the recent increasing violent attacks on academic and academic institutions in many countries, there is also increasing discussion on the university as sites of protection. And again, although there's increase and advocacy to have the university as sites of protection, our discussion in the region seems to still be limited to the situation where university are part of the state agent that control or violate academic freedom and not the site of protection. So in this context, the expected role of the university, and when we put university as the role to provide critical knowledge and building active citizens, these are always conflict in the region. When we look at the International Academic Freedom Monitoring Index, which looks at the instance of killing, violence, disappearance, or wrongful imprisonment or detention, wrongful prosecution, or restriction on travel or movement of academics, or loss of position of academics. We can then see that those International Academic Freedom Monitoring Index may not be able to capture the situation we are experiencing here. Those attacks are real in Southeast Asia, but cannot always represent the situation. Through university control, state authoritarian and repressive measure, and polarization in the society, academics in Southeast Asia are in constant fear or be mindful of what they can speak, whether they will get punished from the authorities or from the society. We have heard many stories of academics who speak out and they are under attack by either the conservative forces in the society or by the smear campaign led by unknown authorities in their countries. So I would suggest that when we look at academic freedom in the region, therefore we need to see the context where higher education and academics are working in, and what allows us to exercise full academic freedom. And here, therefore, I like to highlight two key contexts that apply to many countries in the region. One is on the militarization of education. Along with the discussion on democratic decline, as I mentioned earlier, that we in the region has always been living with we have certain relations with the military, and the military has always exert its relationship or collaboration with the universities. Last year, I think the story from the Philippines, which later we will hear more from Carl, I believe, is really telling about this relationship between the military and the university. In the University of the Philippines has a long established accord with the Armed Force of the Philippines not to allow the military presence on campus due to its history of state repression, and people campaign for to campaign against the authoritarian regime back in the late 1980s. But that accord, that agreement between the university and the army ended, and that abrogation of the University of the Philippines and the Department of National Defense Accord therefore it now allow the university presence on campus. In 2011, yes, 2021, there are more and more collaboration between the armed force and the university. Last year, the Armed Force of the Philippines and the University of the Philippines, Diliman, signed a declaration of cooperation on strategic studies research, publication, and capacity building. Although the agreement, the declaration of cooperation, does not really specify the details on the issues or the topic that they are going to engage in research, but it created an alarm, an alert among the academics in the Philippines, whether this would mean there would be more control from the military. And in March this year, in Indonesia, the students led the protest against the proposed bill that would allow active or non-retired military personnel to have their role in 14 government institutions, including at the ministry level. So in effect, this bill, if it is passed, it would allow the military to work in the civilian function of the government. Luckily, the student and the youth in Indonesia strongly stand up to protest against that. In Myanmar, we are all aware of the civil disobedience movement, where more than 13,000 of teachers who joined the civil disobedience movement in Myanmar were dismissed by the military junta, or they are blacklisted by the authorities. Last year in July, the junta declared that they are going to remove the public employees from blacklist for joining the civil disobedience movement, because the dismissal of the CDM academics and CDM civil servants create a gap, a vacuum in the government operation. Even then, although it is claimed that they are no longer blacklist the civil disobedient, the CDMers, and they would allow the CDMers to get back to work, there are still reports of how the military check up on private school and force the private school in some parts of Myanmar to sign the letters of commitment not to appoint the CDM teachers. So, and you will hear later, I believe, from Ajahn Puangthong from Thailand on how the military try to violate academic freedom and control her research on the role of the military. I give all these cases of some countries to show how the militarization of education are now happening, not only on the research front or on how the militarization of education are now happening, especially on the research front, where what you can teach, what you can research on are now not like directly control, but it will shape how the academic would think about their own work in the region. Another issue that I don't think I have more time, much time to talk about would be on the issue of the permissible topics of research or discussion. As I mentioned earlier, when we look at our colleagues in some countries, even the discussion about human rights or academic freedom is the academic will always be mindful, even just to talk about human rights or academic freedom. And in Thailand last year, there was a proposed bill that would control the research that are deemed threat to national security. Similar attempts has been launched in different countries to control the research agenda. Sorry, I've got the issue that I like to address. And when I look at in preparation for this talk, I look at the discussion on some of the Facebook of the academic. I look at the Facebook of the universities associate the university Rieng, I think, or student Rieng in the Philippines, on how they discuss about what can be how they discuss about the military accord with the university. Interestingly, there are many comments from the public who argues that it is needed to strengthen the military and national security. And they even put that in the context of democracy, that we can talk about, we can teach, and it is needed for the military to work with the university, to have moral, and to encourage the university to be part of that effort to build, to defend national security. This is what we also see in Indonesia, where the discussion about LGBT rights, or the discussion about the struggle for independence in Papua would be under attack. In Thailand, academics who come out to speak for students are also under attack, under smear campaign by the intelligence unit or by the security force or by the conservative forces. So both the militarization of education, the polarization in the society, and the concept of the role of the military, on the role of the education of the university in the region really shape the context of academic freedom and our discussion about rights, about democracy, about space of university to provide to be the ground for critical knowledge in the society. I think I would stop it here and would like to pass the screen on to Bunly Soeung from Svay University in Cambodia. And I believe that the three colleagues that are going to speak next will give more context and detailed situation. Thank you. Bunly. We cannot hear you.
We can see your screen, but there's no sound.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, perfect. Perfect.
Okay, yeah, sorry, there is a technical glitch. So, a very good morning from Cambodia, and I'm so glad to see all of you online. First of all, would like to thank to the organizers for having me for this online discussion. Well, my name is Bunly. Currently, I'm working as a lecturer at Svay University, Cambodia. So allow me to share my slides regarding our discussion. Okay. Do you see my slide, everyone?
Yes, yes, they are perfect.
Okay. So I would like to start off my presentation by very briefly sharing with you the legal framework related to the situation of the academic freedom in Cambodia, which is, as you may know, have very limited and questionable, in the region. Actually, the academic freedom in Cambodia is a new concept, a new idea, because of the historical and the political atmosphere in the country. And when we talk about the academic freedom, I may say that it is still in the process of infancy, like a baby. However, when we talk about the legal framework of the academic freedom in Cambodia, there are certain articles that mention about it, especially in the 1993 Constitution, which clearly stipulate the academic freedom of the higher education. For example, Article 41 and Article 66 actually guarantee the academic freedom for the scholars, for the academies, etc. And these two articles clearly enshrine that the state shall establish a comprehensive and standardized education system throughout the country that shall guarantee the principles of educational freedom and quality to ensure that all the citizens have equal opportunity to earn a living. So this is the core essence of the two articles in the Constitution in 1993. And we also have the education law in Cambodia, which is officially promulgated in 2007. Yeah. And this education law stipulates also about the academic freedom, including the higher education institutions, especially under the Articles 18 and 35. Uh, you know, uh, these two articles articulately mention about the concept and the related elements of academic freedoms in the country. However, what was stipulated in both the constitution and the education related laws were completely different from the real practice, the real implementation. And under the present education system, the current situation of the system of the country, the academic freedom, I may say that is close to the absence, since the freedom to discuss certain issues such as human rights, politics, transparency, corruption, good governance, social justice, history, even the peace education, like Dr. Ben has just mentioned, and also the genocide, as you may know that Cambodia experienced genocide regime from 1975 to 1979. So all these sensitive topics were not allowed to discuss within the university context. For instance, if I'm not mistaken, in 2013, there is a university in Phnom Penh, the capital city, issues like a statement disallowing, I think, around 14 topics regarding Cambodian stock market, securities, companies, illegal drug abuse, even the labor disputes and land conflict. So the university issued a statement that banned the lecturers, the students, the researchers from involving in these very sensitive topics. So, the university actually failed to protect the student and the academic freedom, which I think is the prerequisite for empowering learners to become critical about the knowledge claims. So the government always claims want to transform the country to be a knowledge-based society. So, this really led to the self-censorship where lecturers, researchers, and students, they are not brave enough to raise the restricted topics for their lively discussion, for their critical inquiry. And the university cannot achieve its potential to have a significant contribution to knowledge-based society if academic freedom is not allowed in that such situation. And one more thing that I want to share with you is the situation of the autonomy in most of the universities in the country. So with the political background, I think which is similar to other countries in the region, the government seems to encourage all the higher education institutions, to establish their own strategies, their own policies, and whatsoever to guarantee the quality of the education, to to be recognized regionally or internationally, including the teaching and curriculum and so on. But I think that the Cambodian higher education institutions has been strictly controlled by the state, by the government, where the top-down governance really centrally exists. And so therefore the university's ability to distance themselves from the politics, I think, is very important for their survival. So the term survival is whatever the university is pursued for, rather than pushing for the critical inquiry because of the political situation in the country. And I mentioned about the self-censorship. So because of the very restrictive surrounding political and historical situation, in the country, the commitment to providing academic freedom, institutional autonomy, it's still limited, and this caused the very high level of self-censorship among the academics, teachers, professors, researchers, even the students themselves. And in Cambodia, lecturers, researchers, and students, they practice the self-censorship regarding the discussion, the research topics, the debate about the Cambodian politics and history. I mentioned the history here because we experienced the genocide, as I mentioned earlier, and because the lack of the reconciliation, peace education for over decades. From generations to generations, we live in a traumatized society. Even though I'm not was born during the genocide regime, but I was socially, culturally very impacted by my generations, like my grandparents and, of course, my parents. So this is one of the historical factor that really impact the academic freedom in the country as well. So the limited academic freedom is very detrimental to the critical inquiry, to the knowledge creation, knowledge sharing in the whole society. However, I would like to mention a little bit that the situation of the academic freedom in Cambodia, from my observation and my research for my master degree at the University of Hong Kong, I think that the situation is not too restricted, that we could not do any research or take part in any academic debate, academic discussion at all. In fact, there is spaces where researchers, lecturers, and even students they can maneuver, they can, I may say, play around a little bit to kind of express their academic point of view, their to explore their critical inquiry, and express themselves academically, something like that. As long as their expressions are not politically motivated and their expressions are not aiming at harming the others people's rights. So I think that is what I want to share with you very briefly. And I think I end my presentation here, and we can have a further discussion during the Q&A session. Yes, so thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And so we'll pass the screen to Carl Marc Ramota.
Thank you very much, and good morning or good afternoon, good evening to everyone who are present here in the webinar. My name is Carl Marc Ramota. I teach political science and public management at the Department of Social Sciences in the University of the Philippines, Manila. I recently finished my term as the faculty regent of the University of the Philippines system. And before that, I was also president of our academic union in the university system. So thank you very much to the Southeast Asia Coalition for Academic Freedom and also the Southeast Asia JSEALab in the University of Wisconsin-Madison for having us this morning. It's an opportune time really to share insights and experiences coming from the Philippines because, as you know, it's very much well covered, the recent arrest of former President Rodrigo Duterte, but primarily on charges of crimes against humanity related to his bloody war on drugs in the 6 years of his term as president. But somehow what is not being highlighted in local and even international media are the other forms of extrajudicial killings, harassment, intimidation cases involving human rights defenders. And for this morning, I'll be focusing primarily on faculty members, students, and support staff in education institutions, zeroing in on the experience of the University of the Philippines. Now, allow me to share my slides. I prepared some or a collage of photos so that we can better visualize. Can you see my slides?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. I titled today's sharing, Reclaiming the University, Defending Academic Freedom and Human Rights. This is in the context of the University of the Philippines. I'm sorry, I think, can you still see my slides?
No.
No.
All right,
This
is
one.
it back?
Yes.
Is it back? Okay. I titled this presentation, Defending Academic Freedom and Human Rights in the Philippines, based on the experience primarily of public higher education institutions in the country, including the University of the Philippines system in the last few years since the pandemic. But it's very important to, to take note that a number of these incidents of academic freedom and human rights violations even took place before the pandemic, particularly under the term of Rodrigo Roa Duterte. Now, in this photo, as you can see, this is at the University Avenue of the Diliman campus of the University of the Philippines, a photo taken during the 70s, just before the declaration, or I think this was during the Diliman Commune, wherein students and faculty and staff of the university barricaded the entrance of the campus to prevent the entry of police and military personnel who were out to then to arrest student activists and professors. And in this light, this became the pretext to the arrangement entered into by 1989 between the University of the Philippines administration and the Department of National Defense, as mentioned by Ben earlier, protecting university campuses from unwanted intrusion of police and military personnel or uniformed personnel. But in recent years, we've seen an exponential increase in the number of incidents, documented incidents of violations of academic freedom and human rights, particularly in the context of the University of the Philippines campuses nationwide. In these photos, as you can see, to the left of your screen, that is Lani Flores, who is a professor at the University of the Philippines, Diliman. She was the president of our academic union, and just after her term ended, she was apprehended by police personnel in her home inside the Diliman campus of the university for trump-up charges. Now, a month after, the charges were dismissed by the court. But this is just an example of harassment against human rights defenders, and this time academics will boldly speak against government policies, that they are vulnerable against or vulnerable on trump-up charges filed by state elements, including the military. Now, this was in February 2023. A few months after, in the same year, in August, there was a report of a police drone which crashed in the administration, the main administration building of the university in the Diliman campus. And when asked, because the police personnel later on retrieved that surveillance drone, when asked what was the drone doing hovering over the campus, and they claimed that it was mainly for observing traffic. Now, this is not the first time that drones were sighted in campuses of the University of the Philippines. A similar incident also happened in the Mindanao campus in southern Philippines when student councils were assembled to select the next student regent. That was also in August 2023. But far more alarming, in January of that year was the abduction of an alumnus and also a lecturer in the University of the Philippines Cebu campus that is in central Philippines. They were abducted in the Cebu City port in broad daylight. But because of the vigilance of the university constituency and also the Academic Freedom Protection Committee that has already been established in the said campus, 6 days after, the university administration was able to recover Dayan and Armand Dayoha from police custody. No, but that is not the case for most university constituents. We are reminded of the case of missing university students Karen Empeño and Sherlyn Kadapan, and recently another set of alumni of the university, Bazu De Jesus and Dexter from University of the Philippines, Baguio, who continue or remain missing until this moment. Now, that is not just confined, or these cases of human rights and academic freedom violations are not confined in cases of abduction, trump-up charges, and so on. In 2021, there were attempts to pull out references of books, even ban the circulation of books by government agencies themselves. No, so in this news clip image to your left, you can see the order coming from a regional office of no less than the Commission on Higher Education in the Philippines, ordering state universities to clear out books that are perceived to be subversive from their library collection. The same is true for books that supposedly mention the National Democratic Front of the Philippines related to the communist insurgency in the Philippines. But far more alarming is this incident at the upper right hand corner of your screen. There were 5 books in 2023 that were prevented from public release or circulation by the same agency, the Philippine Language Commission of the government, which actually sponsored the publication of these books, simply because there's perception or there's complaint that some of them contain subversive text or document by simply mentioning words such as revolution and so on. Now, this incidents happened post-pandemic or during the pandemic from 2021 to 2023. But even before the pandemic, particularly under the Rodrigo Roa Duterte administration, there were already attempts to vilify, to demonize groups and even entire university systems, linking them to the communist insurgency. As you can see to the left of your screen, this was in 2018. No less than the Armed Forces of the Philippines terror tagged around 20 schools in Metro Manila, including the University of the Philippines campuses in Metro Manila, linking them to the so-called Red October plot to topple down the Duterte government. This was followed by the terror tagging and defacement of the facade of the University of the Philippines campus in Cebu City in Central Philippines in 2019. And also in the same year, the police station in the municipality of Miagao in Iloilo province in Central Philippines as well wrote a letter to the university administration requesting for a copy of the names of officers and members of the union, meaning the names and officers of professors and academic support personnel who are affiliated with the union. Now, interesting enough, during this period, then President Duterte issued out an executive order, that is EO number 70, creating the well-funded National Task Force to End Local Communist Armed Conflict, or NTF-LCAC. Now, this intergovernment agency task force main task is to identify groups in the private sector and even in government agencies that are perceived to be connected to the communist insurgency. And what transpired then and up to the present is the incessant terror tagging of different groups, including unions and university personnel. In this slide, as you can see, it's not just confined in higher education institutions. Supposedly, schools or basic education and its schools are protected. In schools, basic and secondary schools nationwide, you always see that signage in front of the perimeter fence that these are zones of peace, primarily intended to ward off any attempt to or to prevent these schools from being caught in the crossfire between different armed combatants or warring factions. But I'd like to point your attention to the case of the closure of more than 200 schools, basic schools, community schools for indigenous peoples, particularly in Mindanao, in southern Philippines. No less than the Department of Education itself ordered the closure of these schools, primarily because they were being identified as schools for rebels. But these schools were put up by indigenous peoples communities with the help of some religious organizations. But just because they're situated in areas that are caught in the crossfire between insurgents and government troops, they were also labeled as schools for the rebels. And this became an infamous case in the Philippines in the last few years, claiming lives of not just students, but also Lumad school teachers in the area as part of the government's anti or counter-insurgency campaign. Now, teachers' unions, such as the Alliance of Concerned Teachers, have also been at the receiving end of government terror tagging activities and also the filing of trump-up charges. The image that you can see below is ACT Teachers Party List Representative Franz Castro, who is facing trump-up charges of child abduction, simply because she and her team responded to the call for a rescue mission for Lumad students and teachers who were caught in the crossfire, particularly of a military operation in the Davao region in southern Philippines. Now, Castro has earned the ire of the Duterte administration, and now the Vice President of the Philippines, Sara Duterte, who was once the Secretary of Education, because of her vocal or her opposition to government policies and her expose against the Vice President on alleged corruption cases in the agency, and particularly in her office. Now, what exactly are the university constituents doing since the abrogation of the 2021 accord between the University of the Philippines and the Department of National Defense? This was also mentioned earlier. there were efforts to call for the institutionalization of mechanisms for monitoring, documentation, reporting, and even quick response to university constituents, professors, students, and staff members to come to their legal aid or even administrative aid. And this was launched in early 2024. It became a multi-sectoral initiative, a campaign. And this is the call for the creation of the Committee on the Promotion and Protection of Academic Freedom and Human Rights. So there were a number of fora held in various campuses of the university in the last 2 years from 2023 to 2024, including this one in October 2023 with a colleague from Malaysia and also a representative from Scholars at Risk Network. And I'm very happy to share that in 2023 particularly, in an unprecedented move, university councils across the University of the Philippines system issued out statements of support for the creation of the said committee that is from the northern most campus of the university up to its Mindanao campus in the south. And this was followed by the actual creation or establishment of the Committee on the Promotion and Protection of Academic Freedom and Human Rights. Out of the 9 campuses of the University of the Philippines, there are already 4 academic freedom committees established. 2 are in the pipeline, and we're hoping the other campuses will soon establish their own committee on the promotion and protection of academic freedom and human rights. And just last year, in December last year, we were able to hold the first Academic Freedom and Human Rights Conference in the Philippines. So I think this is also the title of today's webinar. And this was attended not just by constituents of the University of the Philippines, but also other public and private higher education institutions, human rights organizations, student groups, and so on. And we're hoping to hold it on a more regular basis in the coming years. But despite all of these efforts, we always have to be wary of recent developments, such as this one. In 2024, the third quarter of 2024, the University System Administration entered into an arrangement with the armed forces again. Or this is the so-called Declaration of Cooperation. This was widely questioned by the university constituency as this did not undergo discussion among university councils. Even the Board of Regents was not aware of this Declaration of Cooperation before it was signed by a representative of the university administration. But there are bright spots. Again, in the Cebu campus of the university, it recently declared a ban on uniformed personnel inside the campus because as mentioned by Ben earlier in her sharing, the militarization of higher education is seen primarily with the normalization of military presence inside campuses. And that's exactly what the Armed Forces of the Philippines and even the Philippine National Police are doing across campuses of the university and even in other higher education institutions. So I think that's all for this morning. I hope to hear your questions, sharing, or comments in the open forum later on. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And let us now pass the screen to Professor Puangthong Pawakapan.
Okay, let me share my slide. Can you see my slide?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Justice in Southeast Asia Lab and SEACAF for having me. I'm Puangthong Pawakapan. I teach in the Department of International Relations at Chulalongkorn University. As Ajahn Bencharat told you, we in Thailand never really have freedom of expression on all matters. I mean, as many of you may be aware that in Thailand, the lese majesty law or Article 112 of the Criminal Code has been the real problem for academics and Thai people in general for several decades. But the situation has been getting worse since the coup d'etat in 2006. But today I will not focus on the lese majesty issue only. I will talk about the recent development. Okay, please allow me to share my experience, which would demonstrate how the military and royalist forces trying to coordinate systematic threats against academic freedom. So I speak today not just
your screen, your slide is not in full screen mode. We cannot see the big.
you cannot see my slide?
Yes, but not in full screen mode.
All right. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. This. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Let me. It is okay if I share this because I need to see my take. I'm not sure if I.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Okay. So today I will speak not just as an academic, but as a direct target of authoritarian repression in Thailand. Beyond academia, I have been actively involved in civic movement. In 2021, I served as a coordinator in the campaign to amend the lese majesty law on the Article 112 of the Criminal Code. And I also involved in a civil society truth-finding effort to investigate the crackdown of the lectures in 2010. And in that report, we accused the military and the government for using excessive force against the unarmed civilians. About almost 100 people were killed in this crackdown. And then following the 2014 coup, I was summoned for interrogation at the military junta headquarters. Though I was released without charge, there was a clear act of intimidation aimed at silencing critical academic voices. Following the coup, a number of academics and several activists have to flee the country. And then immediately after the coup in 2014, the junta banned all media from hosting academics in political discussion. In contrast, right-wing outlets featuring only royalist scholars continue without interference. The censorship lasted nearly 5 years until we have election in 2019. Okay. Over the past 5 years, I shifted my research toward the military internal security affairs. I gave public talks, press interviews, and maintained an active social media presence. I published 2 books exposing the military effort to infiltrate and control politics and society. Then between May and July 2021, during the peak of the youth movement in Thailand, I learned that my phone was infected with Pegasus spyware. It is a state-grade surveillance software. Actually, it's a war-grade surveillance software. My phone was hacked at least 5 occasions. I was among at least 30 targets, including student activists and 2 other academics. We were treated as We were not treated as scholar, but as an enemy of the state. In September last year, I published Thai language book. This book, that on the right one. I published a Thai language book analyzing the military internal security strategy, which actually is a translation version of the English one. The military spokesperson then came out to publicly attack me, claiming the book contained false and misleading content. They attempted to suppress its distribution and urged Chulalongkorn University, where I based, to launch an ethics inquiry against me. They even threatened to press a libel charge against me. The right-wing social media account launched harassment campaigns. A prominent royalist petitioned to revoke my pending professorship appointment, and even live stream confrontational visit to my faculty twice. Luckily, I was not there. Then in March this year, an MP, Mr. Chia from the opposition party, disclosed in parliament that the military information operation, or the IO unit, has systematically monitored and attacked opposition MPs, NGOs, and academics. In 2024, last year alone, 85 individuals, including myself, were subjected to over 84,000 cyber attacks, phishing, brute force logins, spams, and more. The most chilling revelation, of course, the IO unit is led by General Thammanun Vithi. He is part of the King's Guard. In this picture on the right here, is show the academic that who were target by the IO. Ajahn Bencharat also in this our target in this operation. She's here, and other are Rajak Kongkirati, Pitpong Sawat, Anusorn Uwano, Charita, Bantuwong, Somsak Yenthira Sakun, Pavin Pongpan also in this group of target too. This is the picture of the harassment campaigns against me. This is just some of them, not all of them. The campaign were on the Facebook account that believed to belong to the military IO operations. All this took place in October last year. I mean, on this campaign. So it was soon after my book launch. And then the case of Professor Paul Chamber. Professor Paul Chamber is based at Soeung University. The case against them illustrates the increasingly repressive environment facing academics in Thailand. As a widely recognized expert on Thai military, Paul became a target simply for doing his job. The army filed a less majestic charge against him using very weak and unsubstantiated evidence. The court initially denied him a bail, put him in prison for 1 or 2 nights, revoked his visa. After the public outcry, the prosecutor eventually dropped the charge against him. However, the Soeung University still revoked his work permit, effectively ending his academic career in Thailand. This is the first time that a well-known foreign scholar faced such a horrible treatment. This action against Paul Chambers and myself are not isolated incidents. They serve as a warning to the entire academic community. The message is quite clear. Military affairs now like the monarchy issues. are off limits for critical study. Any scholar who dare to challenge military roles or question its influence risk being viewed as a threat to national security. It's worth noting that research on the Thai military is quite limited, especially when it comes to publication in Thai language. Publication in English is richer, but they rarely reach Thai public. If you were to ask Thai scholar or the general public to name an expert on Thai militaries, I'm fairly certain that most could name only one person, that is Professor Surachat Bamrungsung. This lack of scrutiny has worked in the military favor for a long time. They have long operated without sufficient examination. Understandably, they are unhappy that my research and books have exposed some of their planned activities. I believe this is the main reason behind the attack on both Paul and myself. This marks another dangerous moment for Thai academic freedom in Thailand. The space for independent research and critical discourse is rapidly disappearing. The suppression of critical voices not only undermine academic integrity, it reinforces authoritarian control over knowledge and public debate. Self-censorship is no longer just a survival strategy, it is becoming the norm. Meanwhile, let's just say prosecution continue to rise. Freedom of expression under the elected government has not improved. A friend at Thammasat University was recently received a guilty verdict with a 2-year suspended sentence for posting just one sentence on Twitter. Another friend at Naresuan University is currently facing a charge. The elected government of Puangthong, Chinawat, and Pheu Thai Party is avoiding doing anything that might jeopardize relationship with the military and the establishment. They have remained silent in the face of ongoing rights violations. Meanwhile, militarization of education in school and higher education are increasingly militarized. They became outposts of the military state. Many higher education institutes in Thailand, including Chulalongkorn University, which claim to be the pillar of the nation or the number one university in Thailand. Chulalongkorn even allowed the military to run its security courses independently, with army officers serving as lecturers. The establishment sent their people to sit in university council, eventually those of the Ratchapat University, which produced teachers. As of now, we have 38 Ratchapat institutes in Thailand. The aim is to produce pro-establishment teachers. Then if you look back at what happened during the rise of the youth movement in 2020 and 2021, it becomes even clearer that freedom of expression in Thailand is sadly shrinking. At that time, people felt that the ceiling on discussion about the monarchy and its network had been shattered. Critical commentary on this institution, which was shared more openly at demonstration sites and on social media. There was a euphoric sense that Thai society had entered a period of enlightenment and open speech. The taboo had been broken, but now that ceiling has collapsed upon those who dare to express their opinions. Hope has suddenly vanished. Several youth activists have sought asylum abroad. Many are in prison now, and many are on trial. The climate of fear is back, or even stronger than ever. Then what to do? Can we depend on fellow academic or university administrator to defend our rights and freedom? The answer is no. In my case, only a few colleagues publicly supported me. Most remain silent out of fear. Paul Chamber received even less support. None of his colleagues show the support to him. Only one person, there is a Japanese professor at Naleson University. I understand this fear and I cannot blame them. Each individual has his or her and her own limits. What about Chulalongkorn University, who claim to be the pillar of the nation? They simply disgraced themselves by initially attempting to cancel my book launch on the campus. Their really worst cause after media public backlash and condemnation. In fact, since the coup d'etat in 2006, when several academics were threatened, no university leaders ever came out to defend their student and faculty members. Worse, some even collaborated with the power, even pressured against their faculty members. Ironically, I received more support from the public than from academia. Thousands of social media users share my reaction to the military threats, and more than 500 people came to my book launch. I believe this show of public support helped deter further harassment from the military. In this hostile environment, we are lucky to have a strong and determined opposition party, the People's Party. They courageously summoned military officers before parliamentary committees on the case of Paul Chambers and myself. They condemned the intimidation of academic and abuse of power. This moment offered rare institutional protection. But even this is not at risk. The People Party is facing imminent destruction. The National Anti-Corruption Commission, which is a tool of the establishment, is preparing to disqualify 44 of its key members. If that happens, I believe that it will happen soon. We are left with no defenders. Freedom of expression in Thailand face a bleak future, and for academics, self-censorship will only deepen. Okay, that's all for me for this trial. Thank you.
Thank you so much. As folks are putting their questions into the Q&A box, I just wanted to make a couple notes across the four really phenomenal presentations. One that seems really striking is that the different ways in which the military is infiltrating universities and intellectual work across the region. I think especially the comparison of Thailand and the Philippines is both really apt and also incredibly chilling for the similarities, and I think the different ways in which the militaries in both countries, I'll expand it to state security forces in both countries, are willing to just put rights aside in all of the ways. The other thing that's really striking is, especially thinking about Thailand and Cambodia, is the position of law and either the decision by those who hold power to ignore the laws that exist to protect academic freedom or freedom of expression that exist in the Constitution or in other parts of national law, as well as the willingness to really actively use and abuse the law to silence thought, to silence critical ideas, to silence just the sheer act of questioning. But I think in thinking about the particular threats and challenges that exist, what's maybe the most concerning, perhaps because the question of how to fight back against it, I think, is one that needs collective thought, is the different ways in which ideological polarization and the placing of certain ideas beyond question. And of course, in every context, it's a different thing that's placed beyond question, that it is, it's the violent past and its irresolution in the context of Cambodia, that it is the abuse of state power in all of its many forms in the Philippines, that immediately gets one tagged as being dangerously leftist, and that in the Thai context, it's been the monarchy for a long, for 2 decades now, but that clearly the military is now squarely in the category of what's like the word in English, like that you can't touch it. It has become untouchable, and that they are willing to use whatever, the range of tools that all of the speakers spoke about across the region, whether it is prosecution, whether it is illegal IO operations, whether it is extrajudicial violence and threats. There's a range of tremendous violence. And yet what is simultaneously striking is that everybody spoke about the ways in which people are continuing to both fight back, but also just continuing to do one's work as a scholar. That even in the face of all this, people are continuing to teach, to do research, to make alliances with colleagues, to make alliances with entities beyond the university, to try to force open or cultivate the spaces that might be able to still be used as spaces to maneuver in such a time. So in this moment, that is perfect. There 6 questions have come in the time of some summarizing. So let's see. I was trying to make everybody up here. I think Adan Puangthong, I think if you maybe can you stop sharing your screen?
Oh, okay, sorry.
No problem. Okay, now we are everyone is visible. So why don't we start with there's 2 questions from Corinne Zachary, who asks that is it possible to generalize the relationship between legal protection and de facto academic freedom across the region? Are academic freedoms equally unprotected in law across the region? Are there any particular trends in how existing legal protection is disregarded in current states? And then she also asks, in Thailand, we have seen how the university management have participated in the repression of its own staff. Is this a trend across the region? So who would like to start?
Yeah, I can respond to the first question on the legal protection. Thank you, Corinne, for the question. I think if we look at the law, if we look at the constitution, it's interesting to see that it's almost in every law in the region that talks about protection of academic freedom. So it looks good in the law, as Bunly also when he talks about the situation in Cambodia. Not only that, in the ASEAN University Assessment Quality Framework, Quality Assurance Framework, it also talks briefly about academic freedom that the university should state publicly and that they are defending or guaranteeing academic freedom. And as a result, you may see in many universities in Thailand, in fact, issuing a public statement that we are in defense of academic freedom. And yes, you are right. The de facto academic freedom is always not what written in the law. But if you ask what is the regional trend, I would say it is it may look like that legal protection of academic freedom is a simple rhetoric in the region, but I would suggest that we look a little bit further, that I think it's similar to other discussion about human rights in the human rights discourse in the region, where the emphasis is always on the duty and responsibility. When people claim rights, people, other state or other fraction within the society will ask, what about their duty? What about their responsibility? And I think that also applies to academic freedom, where the emphasis is either on the, as I mentioned earlier, the role of the university as the state mechanism to produce good citizens, or the responsibility of the academics to produce work to achieve economic prosperity for the country, for example. And that's actually as the framework that define what you can research in different countries, or whether your research will be supported by the authorities. So yeah, for me, I would say the regional trend is not so much about that the legal protection is disregarded, but on the other side of the discussion of academic freedom or freedom and human rights, that focus more on the role of the academics to support the state or be the state mechanism. Thank you.
Can I also respond to the question? In the Philippines, academic freedom protection is in fact enshrined in the Constitution in Section 14, or Section 5, Article 14 of the Constitution, and in a number of university charters, including UP's own charter in 2008. But I think we have to go beyond the very concept of academic freedom that's confined with the notion that it protects faculty members or academics in terms of what we can teach, how to teach it, among others. Because the situation now in the country and also in the region and elsewhere in the globe, we always have to look at academic freedom from a human rights perspective. And so it also affirms our role and place as public intellectuals, because the traditional notion of academic freedom would account for our academic work. But how about our own political work? That's also akin to our academic work, our organizing work, our work as unionists, as academic unionists, as community workers, and so on. So whenever we step out of our campuses to partner with communities, we become vulnerable simply because of that labeling of police and military institutions. And it becomes problematic because the same agencies that are responsible for protecting academic freedom and human rights are themselves violating these provisions. As I mentioned earlier, the one who issued out the ban on perceived subversive books in state school libraries is no less than the regional office of the Commission on Higher Education in the Cordilleras. The Department of Education was at the forefront of closing down indigenous people's schools or Lumad schools in Mindanao in southern Philippines. So it becomes problematic when the same education agencies that are responsible for regulating, for supervising education institutions and schools are the ones part or becoming part of this practice. Incidentally, the same education agencies are part of the National Task Force to End Local Communist Armed Conflict. So they were also part, or they are also party to the same McCarthy-style terror tagging against academics and education support personnel across universities.
Wow, that is chilling in so many ways. Any additional comments on this question from either Ajahn Puangthong or Bunly? Okay. There's two questions that I think will go nicely together. One from Antana Watira Asagon asks, in what ways can people in academia cope with the mental impact of constant and sometimes unconscious self-censorship caused by threats to academic freedom? And how can we continue to advocate for and uphold academic integrity despite these challenges? And then another question that I think is quite resonant is from Sarah Bishop, who asks, as academics in restricted contexts, what gives you the courage to continue to push the bounds of what is sayable? And as you do this valuable work, what kinds of support are most useful to help you continue to do so? That's a good one for everybody, I think. if you're willing to answer them.
Okay, I will try to answer that, Antana. And it's okay, how to cope with mental impact and constant and sometimes conscious self-censorship. I mean, it's pretty much on individual choice, but we have to unite, to do it together. I mean, I know that state threat is very scary, but I don't demand people to do it on an individual basis, but we should do it together. I mean, in Thailand, we have this group called the Network of Academic for Civil Rights. It has been active before, but somehow in these last 2 years, it's really slowed down, and we hardly heard anything from the group. Actually, I'm part of the group, and but I think the atmosphere of fear is very strong among members of the group. Say, when someone suggests that we should issue a statement, a group statement to defend the rights of Paul Chamber, one of the members suggested that we shouldn't put our individual names in the statement, just issue it in the name of the group, which is less powerful. Actually, academic statement quite often doesn't have any real impact. But if you don't put individual names in the statement, it even weaker. I mean, people don't want to be attacked, to be a target, especially academic in the provinces. They are less protected. I mean, I'm in Bangkok at Chulalongkorn University, so it's a kind of protection for me. Literally think twice before they do anything to a professor at Chulalongkorn University. Why military in the provinces seem to more reckless. Look at the way they treated Paul Chamber. And also partly because Thai academic are always self-censors, even though it has nothing to do with politics. For example, Thai academic are very concerned. I mean, okay, everywhere is concerned about promotion, but in Thailand, many of you may not know that you won't be able to get professorship without royal endorsement. So this kind of mental censorship that you won't do anything to put yourself on the radar of the establishment, that you are kind of critical to their power, because you're afraid that if you are applying for professorship, you will not get it. Actually, I know that it has nothing to do with the palace, this royal endorsement, but of course it has to do with the bureaucrats who processing your application. If they see your names, they may prolong the process. But you have to confront them. I mean, two months ago, I confronted the Ministry of Higher Education why you have processed my application for over 3 years. But then they explained to me the process, this and that. And finally, 2 months later, I got it. But you have to confront them. Now, if you retreat, they will get more and more offensive toward you. And this is a mentality of among Thai academic. They think that they will be safe if they are silenced. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
I
Yeah.
like to add to Dr. Puangthong and the point to respond to the question is, yeah, we really need a collective voice to defend and to speak out and confront the repression or the situation that we are facing in. But I also acknowledge the example that Dr. Puangthong mentioned about different demands or different controls in different aspect of the academic life that may not allow us to really come out and speak up or even to follow the situation. But then I guess if we talk about collective voice or collective action, the experiences from the Philippines, when, as we heard from Carl, the work of the unions among the academics are very, very important. Unfortunately, union is not officially allowed among the public university in Thailand and also in other countries. I'm not sure if in the Philippines your union is the official body, but here government official cannot form a union, and therefore we may have a university like we call the university lecturer council, but they don't really represent the interest or defend the academics. In Indonesia, there are attempts to form academic worker union unofficially, but and it's still very new, but they can be the forum where academic voice can be protected. But having said that, I also recognize that academic freedom is still not the common discourse, or we still do not share understanding about academic freedom or the awareness about academic freedom, as we heard also from Bunly, and I think that's also applied in other countries as well. And therefore, when something happens, even on the academic themselves, they don't feel that they need to stand up, they need to speak out. And that together make the protection of academic freedom is even more challenging.
If I may add to the discussion, yes, unions are really very important. We have to get ourselves organized as academics, but not just unions in the education sector, but also maximizing democratic spaces available in existing arrangements such as the University Council. It's important that our University Council speak up on various issues, particularly on human rights violations, academic freedom violations. Second, we also have to coalesce with different groups in the university, the student body, student organizations, student councils, our academic support and administrative support personnel, and also link up with other groups outside the university. So it should be in the form of a multi-sectoral alliance inside the university and link up with other human rights defenders outside university systems.
Any additional comments or responses to, yes, Bunly?
Yeah, thank you very much. May I have just a few points to join with your comments? Yeah, response to the question related to the mental impact felt by the academics. Sometimes we ourselves, we don't feel that we resort to self-censorship ourselves. So according to my own experience, I actually work at a university in the province, quite a bit far from the capital city. However, the complete control of the university governance is very strong, very firm. So based on my experience, I have my own approach. I myself try to use like kind of the culturally adopted approach. So, it's mean that the use of the language, like you want to advocate for academic freedom. So what particular academic freedom you are advocating for, like research? So I do some research related to human rights, but I do not literally use the word human rights or child rights or women rights, but I transform that specific sensitive terms into very local terms, which is not very sensitive to the university governance or even to the government officials who are very watchful to our work. So I think it helped me to continue my research projects. Not very comfortable manner, but to me, that's the best way that I can move forward and advocate for the human rights, including the academic freedom. And I also agree with all of you that you talk about the collective action. So I think that we can start from the very little thing, little project, little idea, yeah, on the ground with our colleagues at the university, even with our students. So we should be very creative and use all the existing environment, existing materials. Try to raise awareness. I think this it is the starting point. Yeah, raising awareness to our colleagues and students, and we also need the external support. Yeah, from the NGO, from the villagers in the community. So for me, I really think that the local knowledge and also the participation from the local people and also the religious or cultural factor can support us in a, I mean, better manner. But still, we are very cautious, always cautious, because we work on these human rights defenders or activists like academic freedom. We have been facing a lot of challenges. So that is my own experience that I have been doing so far. Yeah, I hope it helps. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The next question that I wanted to raise is from Stephanie Duchatelier asking how are, and this actually was Bunly talking about the urgency of of engaging with everyone around us in the community, especially and including villagers, makes me think actually of this question as well, that how are university students engaging with state power within the classroom? Do they push to discuss repressive state policies? And if so, how do professors navigate these forbidden topics when broached? How is it handled when students want to research state-related issues that critically engage with institutions like the military or monarchy? And I would just note to sort of to share from the US context that since January 20th, that has become an enormous issue here of how to navigate using the space of the classroom to share information with students that they need, for example, about how immigration is operating, but while also knowing that your classroom is also potentially a site of surveillance. So yeah, so what have colleagues found in Thailand, the Philippines, and Cambodia?
Okay. In Thailand, I think if students want to do research on the monarchy, I think that is the more difficult topic they have to be aware the threat they are going to face. But before that threat happen, the first thing you have to find someone to supervise your thesis. It's hard to do it. What happened to one professor, Natapon Jai Jing? You say he was a PhD student at Chulalongkorn University, my faculty, my department, and then a couple of years later, he was, accused by his own professors from the same faculty of fabricating, falsifying document in order to attack monarchy, and then that professor petitioned the university to investigate his thesis, even though his thesis got an excellent result. Then Chulalongkorn accept that petition, and the examination keep going on for years. And then this professor also contact the nobles' families, accusing Natapon of libel, violate kind of fabrication against the dead prince who is a great grandfather of the nobles. And then Natapon and the publishers, Natapon published his thesis into a book, and Natapon publisher now facing a libel charge. They demand him to pay 50 million baht for this libel charge. It's still going on. So the case of Natapon has been a clear message for the next generation of students. Don't even try to do it. The university will not protect you. And so it's difficult to find professor to supervise the research on the monarchy. For military, not many students. This is quite astonishing. Thailand has been under the military rule very often. We have the highest number of coup d'etat. But we hardly have any student who conducted research on military. I don't know why. I myself just turned my interest, my research interest to military affairs. But before that, we hardly have any new expert or student working on this military. And now, my case also send message to new generation of scholar and student that be careful if you want to research on military.
Additional thoughts?
Yes. In the case of the University of the Philippines, I think owing to its progressive history tradition, the student body, through the student council, was able to incorporate alternative classes or alternative classroom learning experience into the academic calendar. So we have a day or two wherein regular academic activities, classes are suspended to give way to such alternative discussions focusing either on human rights, on policy issues, political dynasties, among others. And I think that's a great feat on the part of the student body and their efforts to incorporate such alternative discussions. The challenge now is how to incorporate perhaps human rights education into the actual curriculum across disciplines in the general education, perhaps because there are snippets, say, of democracy and citizenship, but focusing primarily on human rights education and protection. I think that's very important in today's political context. But I was also looking at some of the questions earlier, and I think it's related to this point. The challenge also is the situation for other schools and universities wherein either the faculty member or the university administrator become instruments of repression or even agents of disinformation, historical distortion, because that has been the case in the Philippines for quite some time now, particularly under the Duterte government and even now under Marcos Jr. We see even social sciences teachers from basic education up to the tertiary level teaching about the glory days of the Marcos senior government, and omitting the dark years or the dark experiences under martial law or under the dictatorship. So, and these are faculty members, these are teachers. So we really have the work cut out for us among scholar activists, among unionists in the education sector, on how to actually conscientize, organize among our ranks to address such issues, including distortion.
That was actually the next question that I was going to shift us to, and so I want to I'll share it with everybody to see if there's other comments, because I think it's a huge question. From Rafael Antonio Ortile asking, one thing that must be discussed are the pro-state academics who spread state disinformation. How can the academic community weed out those in the ranks who are abusing their positions and backgrounds? And I might also just add to it of like how to, because it makes me think of Thailand in the case of Ajahn Natapon Ding that Ajahn Puangthong raised, of the how does one defend oneself against these kinds of figures, because they seem to be everywhere, operating maybe in slightly different forms, using slightly different tools depending on the context. But what are how can we fight back against them, or fight back / protect oneself? I mean, I think it's maybe both. Any ideas?
Perhaps just like what I mentioned earlier in the presentation, it should not just be the battle of the individual faculty member. I think one of the first steps that we can take at the level of our own university or campuses, respective organizations, is to put up mechanism for protection and monitoring of such incidents. In the case of the University of the Philippines, for the last 2 years, we've been pushing for the creation or the establishment of the Committee on the Promotion and Protection of Academic Freedom and Human Rights. We've been successful in a number of campuses, but it's also a question of how to operationalize it after the institution. So that is something that we really have to address, the crafting of implementing rules and regulations. But institutionalization efforts for such mechanisms should be the first step. I mean, there is really a gap in terms of university process and policies on protecting academics in their research, in their community work, in their political work. And most often than not, this becomes the function of either the dean or the chancellor or even the university president. But there should be a university body or committee that is primarily in charge of it. Also for the legal protection and administrative aid in the form of, coordination with government agencies, unit, even the police and the military, whenever such incidents arise.
Okay, let me answer your question. I mean, the monarchy topic is the most difficult one. It's scare people off. We cannot ask people to challenge the power of the monarchy. No, I mean, and the state, all the state apparatus will not compromise. They will arrest you and place charge against you right away, even though you have a very weak, even though they have very weak evidence. But the military issue, resisting military power and trade is easier. Look at the case of Paul. They reversed their decision quite quickly because of the public outcry and condemnation. So that's why the prosecutor dropped the charge against Paul quite quickly. So if we try to resist military threat by corrective action, it's still that there's still that a high possibility that we will succeed in doing it. But I cannot ask my colleagues, my friend in Thailand to do it because it's involved myself. If they want to be quiet, I cannot demand them, but you have to do something, you have to take action. Because it involved myself, so it's just I just hope that academy in Thailand can say that fighting with the military is you get more support from the public. Because what happened in Thailand right now, or the corruption thing, even the collapse of the building in Bangkok, people can see it is related to the military power. All these corruption projects, happen during the military rule. So people will support you. And another issue that maybe I will, it's a kind of a request to the international academic communities. What that maybe you can do something to help academic in Southeast Asia. Condemnation statement by the international scholar is good, even though it's had little effect. But however, the case of Paul Chambers show that academic sanction exert greater pressure on the Thai government. In Paul's case, the media pays special attention simply because they believe that it will affect Thailand tariff negotiation with Trump administration. There has been speculation that the Thai government has not yet been able to hold meeting with the US side for negotiations, while several others ASEAN countries have already moved forward because the US was dissatisfied with the Thai government over Paul case and also the case of the forced repatriation of Uyghur refugees back to China. Therefore, in the future, if we can attach economic and political sanction to the pressure, it will be more powerful. Please consider that at present, Thailand is a temporary member of the UN Human Rights Commission. Yet there are widespread human rights violations occurring. With the government showing no attention, the Thai government showing no attention of protecting human rights at all. So we should consider how we might take advantage of Thailand's position in the UN Human Rights Commission. In other words, the pressure should expect concrete effect. Yeah.
Thank you so much. We are almost at the end of our shared time, so I wanted to hand the floor to Ajahn Bencharat, and also just note that clearly the range of questions indicates the urgency of continuing to talk about these issues. And yeah, but Ajahn Ben.
Thank you, Tyrell. And yeah, I have listened. So thank you for all the participants for this discussion. I think that, as Tyrell mentioned, there's a lot that we need to still to talk about. I think when we discuss towards the Q&A, it points to the need to have this regional collaboration, especially like when Bunly talks about that he cannot or Ajahn Puangthong talks about when they cannot talk about some certain topic in their own countries. It's where international support, international solidarity, or where other academics can speak for you. And I think that's one of the goals that SEACAF which that we could develop throughout this the work of SEACAF by strengthening this network, collaboration, and monitoring efforts. Please watch out for the next seminar on academic freedom, and Carl will also join us in the panel next week in the webinar. And later on, we are now doing the national baseline research. So the discussion that we have today will be part of that baseline research on the situation of academic freedom in 11 countries in the region. And at the end of the year, we will publicize this research and we will hear more about the situation and discuss together on what we can do to defend and promote academic freedom in the region. And again, thank you all the panelists, all the participants, and especially Tyrell and the JSEALab in Southeast Asia. Thank you very much.
Thank you all so
Thank you.
much. Stay safe. Keep fighting.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
you.